All right, hello again, ladies. I am honored to introduce our next speaker to the stage, Andi Simon. Andi Simon, a passionate and international speaker in the growing field of corporate anthropology, is the founder and CEO of Simon Associates Management Consultants. For over 2 decades, her consulting business has used anthropology's theory, methods, and tools to help companies respond to fast-changing times. Her newest book, Women Mean Business, Over 500 Insights from Extraordinary Leaders to Spark Your Success, was published in September 2023. Written with Edie Fraser and Robin Bisman, Women Means Business brought together 102 exceptional leaders to share their wisdom, celebrating and educating women. We're proud to have her today. Welcome, Andi.
Where's Mark? Mark is there on the left-hand side. All right, Mr. Mark. Then you click me along. Okay, we're not clicking me along. Would you click me along? There we go. We will get this organized. It's a pleasure to be here today. And in part, I guess I was here 2 years ago when Rethink Smashing the Myths of Women in Business came out. And I love talking about women and the things that they're doing to really excel in the world of business, which is transforming as we're thinking about it here. I brought 2 boxes of these books, and they, I think, are outside for you to all enjoy. And of course, Amazon loves it if you'd like to share your enjoy with them as well. And I'll put this down because I really want to talk about a theme that is the topic of our conversation today, and that's resilience. And that life doesn't get any easier, but we get better at the hard stuff. I want to talk about it in light of the 3 women up there who are my co-authors, because to some degree the origin myth of a book gives you a setup for talking about the resilience of the women who are in the book. I get a call one day from Edie Fraser, who's the woman in the center, who I barely knew, and Edie had reviewed my second book, and she calls and she says, in only Edie's voice, which I can't quite mimic, "Want to write another book with me?" And I went, "Sure, what's it about?" Well, I have no idea. I said, "Okay, I can do that." But what she really wanted to do was take women who she wanted to celebrate and elevate and make them stories that others could become educated by. It became a theme in the book that as I rise, I lift others. Turn a page and change your life. Now, how could we do that? I must tell you that it was very interesting, talk about resilience. My first book took me 4 years to do. My second took me 2 years to do. This one we found a publisher who wanted it in 6 months, less if we could. And I had 100 women who they wanted in the book who were going to give us a picture, their wisdoms, and make it really work. It was very interesting, talking about having to be adaptive to a challenge that I had no idea how to pull off. But we did it. And what we learned was, and I truly believe this, is that every book has a personality or a signature. This one is very different than anything else I've ever written. It's a compilation. But what came out of it is that the power of a book isn't the book. It's when you, the reader, open the page and begin to read things there that change your life. I had an event down in Houston, a client threw for me, and one of the new women partners had the book completely yellow marked. And I said, "Pauline, what did you do?" She said, "I have to change the way I manage." I had a woman on LinkedIn who wrote us and said, "I'm starting my year by turning a page every day." So there's something magical that happens. But what's magical for us here today is about the resilience of the 100 women in the book. So what I would like to do is share with you some of the stories that I have learned from the women who said, "Yes, here are my 5 wisdoms." And I must tell you that across the entire thing, nobody said no. And I was really fascinated. People who said, "Why am I not in it?" Now that's an interesting story for today. Would you mind flipping the page, please? Sir, there we go. So let me tell you about the stories of the people inside. Now there's a point here. In your mind, and I've said this several times today, your mind has a story. Your mind also does exactly what it thinks you want it to do. And you can be resilient and rise above the challenges that you face, or you can be in a hole, put your head down in the ground and not come up at all. It does exactly what you want it to do. The only one controlling it is you. You have a story in your mind, and that story creates the illusion of your reality. If the story's working for you, hang on to it. If it's not working for you, you need to change it. And the best way for you to change your story is to hear the stories of others. And there's wonderful research that as you're listening to stories, things go on in your brain that begin to modify your own story. The panel that preceded me were full of storytellers, and I was excited listening to them because I could hear my own mind changing. So let me tell you the story of 5 women in this book. Each of them has a story about resilience. Oh, by the way, I forgot to define it for us. And I'm not sure it's about going backwards or forwards, but it is about taking on the challenges that life presents and figuring out how to make a great life. The first one is Suba Barry. Suba is a wonderful woman, and I sat down with her for the first time, and she says to me, "You don't know me, but I've had cancer 6 times. Now, I knew she was president of Ceramont, a marvelous organization that was helping other companies improve their diversity, equity, and inclusion, but I didn't know much about Suba at all. So we sat and we talked, and I began to listen. She said it was 1990, I was in my 30s. I had a young child and a new baby, and I wasn't feeling so well. And finally I got diagnosed with, I think it's type 3B Hodgkin's lymphoma. She went through a very extensive chemotherapy and went into remission, and she figured, done. Talk about resilience. She was at Merrill Lynch as a wealth manager. Now here's a woman who came from India. She said, if it was up to my mom, I would have gotten married down the street, and I'd lived in that guy's house, and everything would be happy ever after. But I came to the US for a career. And I was at Merrill Lynch, and I was one of their top performers in wealth management. And now I had to deal with a bad disease, young children, a lovely marriage, and where was I going? She said, I kept going, and I really performed well until it came back. And then it came back, and then it came back, and then it came back. And I had to figure out each time how I was going to address that, keep my family growing and my career. Over that time, she became a vice president at Freddie Mac. And in Freddie Mac, she was on the firm's management committee. And she was, before that, at Merrill Lynch for 20 years, where she was a top 100 performer. Is that resilience? Is that a way of living life with all that it's dishing out to you and still coming out of it and living beautifully? What she would tell you was that the workplace is changing today. Employees expect work at a place where they can be their full selves. I had to be my full self at work. And somehow they all accepted me. And I was from a foreign country, I was different, I had these diseases, I had these children, and somehow I overcame them all resiliently. Her wisdom, please know yourself and be yourself. You can't be anyone else. But once you know yourself, you can rise above whatever it is and really overcome the obstacles that are in your way, resiliently. The second one, please, Esther. Esther? Did you do 2, or is that 1? It's 1, okay. Then I will go to Esther. Let's see. There we go. Sorry, I skipped around here. Esther rose from humble beginnings, and she tells the story of being an immigrant. She came when she was 4. Her parents were undocumented immigrants from Mexico. She was in Los Angeles. My father was a laborer, and my mother was a garment worker. She said, picture this. I was going to get through college and have a career. I went to Occidental University and I majored in public policy, about which I knew nothing. She said, and then my parents said, go to DC and see what you can find. So she went to DC, only to find that she still knew nothing. She called a professor who was there and said, I got to DC, what am I supposed to do next? And he said, we have to introduce you to all the organizations who could use you in a public policy way. So, figuring she would have interviews, she went and started. She said, I didn't really know what I was doing. You know, you talk about imposter syndrome, Esther will tell you I was an imposter. I was very important, but I had no idea what I was doing. The first group who she met with The first group that she met with was I'll tell you exactly who it was, for La Raza. And the La Raza, it was the National Council of La Raza, and they immediately offered her a job. She said, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I took it. And as she grew even further, and then she found herself in government, making presidential appointments, introducing congressmen to each other, and developing a whole career. She said, one of the things I learned is that you just show up and raise your hand. She said, Latinas are told, don't do that. Who are you? And I learned that you always do that. Raise your hand and see where it takes you. So put yourself out there for the opportunities, raise your hand, and you will be successful. Next one. There's my Shelley Zalis. Shelley Zalis is an amazing woman. Shelley tells the story, and if you ever have a chance, watch her TED Talk. She tells the story of being out of Barnard College and getting a job in traditional market research in New York. Now, Shelley said the times were changing. It was the 1990s. Nielsen was still doing mall intercepts and calling people at their home. And she said to the guys, isn't it time that we start doing online research? And they said, oh, we're not ready yet. Okay. And then one day she found them all going off to a new client to talk about online research. And she said, well, who's going? Oh, Mo and Joe and Molly and Eddie. And she said, where's the gal? Oh, there's no gal. You're not ready yet. And so she said, And what she decided to do was go out and form her own company to be an online market research company. So in 2000, she created OTX, Online Testing Exchange, and she was real savvy. She went after the movie industry to really test their trailers, new TV shows, and to do things online. Before she knew it, she had a $60 million company with 250 employees, and it was growing incredibly fast. But she also found that she was the only woman in the national organization of these wonderful market research companies, the only one president of her own company. She sold the company to Ipsos, a French company, for $80 million. She stayed around for 5 years and she went exploring. Shelley will tell you that I'm a disruptor. The guys make all the rules. They're not always the right ones. And I'm willing to tell them that. And then I disrupt it and create new rules. Really cool lady. So what did she do? She wanted to learn all about technology. And so she was going to CES in Vegas, the technology trade show. Notably consumed by men, for men, with men, all men. And so she didn't want to go all by herself, so she asked a friend, who asked a friend, who asked a friend, who asked a friend. And 50 women went marching in to CES. It was the first time they had ever seen any women in there. They didn't know quite what was going on, and she didn't care. What she learned was it's not about lean in, it's about the power of the pack. And what she began to realize was that the only way she was going to change the way people thought about women was to have women transform them. Resilient, absolutely. Transformative, you have to just meet Shelley. She is now doing all kinds of things because what she realized was that there was a guys club, a boys club, but not a girls club. So she created in these lounges a girls club for the women to meet. And somebody said, why are you calling it a girls club? She said, because you have a boys club, so here's a girls club. And as they laughed about it, she realized that they all needed a place for women and men. So she now has the equality lounges that she sets up for conferences, and it helps people really get along better than they would by themselves. Next one. That's the business of equality. She created the fashion quotient. You may be familiar with it. She will tell you that there's IQ, there's EQ, and there's FQ, and the FQ of the fashion quotient, and that's where the power is. Next one, sir. You're smiling at me. Now we have Sharon Reynolds. Sharon Reynolds is one of my favorite women. Sharon will tell you that she is the great-great-great-great-granddaughter of a woman who was sold as a slave in Nashville for $81. Fifth generation. Yeah, I know. And she says, and I have a responsibility to be a resilient ancestor of this woman. My job is to keep pushing forward and helping black women succeed. Her father was the first African-American fireman in Nashville. Her grandfather had an entrepreneurial store. And she is an entrepreneur par excellence. but it comes with all of the uncertainties that this happens. So she got into the mortgage business, and she got into real estate, and then as all kinds of things were happening around 2008, she came upon new pathogen killing stuff. And she went to Morehouse College, and she got 19 patents for this stuff. And out of it came DevMar Manufacturing. And she is now producing all kinds of stuff to kill pathogens inside companies. Wonderful, except she can't get companies to buy her. And so she began to realize that the supply chain wasn't particularly open for women, particularly black women, who were trying to break into a new system with new products. George Floyd changed that. It opened up the world in ways which are unfortunate. But all of a sudden, Granger became a client. Fortune 500 companies began looking for her, and next thing you know, her resilience opened her up to all kinds of new opportunities. She will tell you, share your pitfalls and your victories. The wisdom of entrepreneurs is that you never have a straight line to where you're going, but you must constantly be resilient. My next one, if you don't mind. Elizabeth Birch. Elizabeth Birch is the only woman I've ever met who announces to me immediately that she was born a lesbian. And I said to her, huh? It was like, okay, I got it. She said, no, I am. And that's how I live my life. She asked me how I could be happy with my husband, but that was a whole other conversation. I said, okay, tell me more. She's now vice president of CBRE, a large corporate real estate firm. But she really began her own career as a director of litigation for Apple and in the Silicon Valley world. And then when she became comfortable with who she was, she moved into the Human Rights Commission and took it over as its president and leader, and for many years grew it and grew it and grew it. She's done all kinds of things to help the LGBTQ community get the respect it deserves. In 2000, she was the first person with an LGBTQ organization to speak at the National Presidential Convention. But what she'll tell you is that the world is diverse, and I must be resilient in order to address it, and so does everybody else. My next one. My wisdom. I don't know which of my resilience I should share with you. I only have 20 minutes, and I have a long, resilient life. I told people at the imposter syndrome that I've been an imposter my entire career. I've never actually been competent or confident in anything I went into. But the one I wanted to share with you, I have two, but one that I love is that when I got my doctoral dissertation, I had to do an oral exam. And I had to do it in front of all the faculty who had already given me lots of good grades, passed my dissertation, and were really quite positive. And I got there and I could not answer a single question. I completely froze. And I sat there and I didn't know quite what to do, so Mel Ember, my advisor, took us out to a bar, had a bunch of beers, and I passed muster. And I laughed because I said, wow. He said, yes, you were resilient. And I didn't know then what that meant, but I've learned all through my career that you really don't have to perform on the spot. You do need to be who you are. Know thyself and be true. So what does this all have to do with all of you and your stories? What I really, really want you to remember is that life is full of challenges. This is an incredible conference to begin to see how people are addressing them, how they're overcoming them, how they're going back and forward and trying to meet the challenges that are every day, whether it's your health or your family or your job, your career, who you are and what you're doing. You can move on to my next slide. Hey, thank you. So there are 5 wisdoms that you probably need to put into your own story. The first one is embrace failure as a stepping stone. When you go back, you go forward. Every time you have a detour, it's a learning experience. Think about it as an opportunity to soar, as opposed to, oh my God, what am I going to do? Be resilient. The second thing, this growth mindset is really important. It's a growth mindset. It's different than being a fixed mindset. You can do anything you want with your story in your mind. You control it. And I've said that often enough today for you to know it's a time for you to take control of your story. Build a strong support network. Many of the women in the book said your network is your net worth. But one woman said very carefully about build it carefully. I built a network that didn't do me any good at all. I loved them all, but nobody helped each other. Careful network building helps you support yourself during the good times and the bad. Fourth, practice self-care and compassion. Be kind to yourself. There's no reason not to be. You can really be the kind of person to you that can rise everything else around you. And last, find meaning and purpose in adversity. The opposition can be your best friend. Really learn from the experience. What can you do? So remember that resilience is not about avoiding challenges. It's about facing them with courage and grace. And thank you for knowing where I was. Because this is a time for all of us to face the future with very positive attitudes about what we can do and how to do it. I have two quotes that I'd like to leave you with. One is by Oprah, one of my favorite ladies. The greatest discovery of all times is that a person can change their future by merely changing their attitude. It's in your hands. But my other favorite quote, please. I like Audrey Hepburn. I believe in being strong when everything seems to be going wrong. I love girls. Happy girls are my favorite girls. I believe that tomorrow is another day, and I believe in miracles. And I do believe in miracles. And this is sort of a miracle, and I thank you. My last slide is my last slide. I thank you for the opportunity of sharing our perspective about resilience. I must say you're a wonderful audience. I've been watching your faces, and I can't thank you enough for being here with us today. You are all very resilient, strong, and beautiful women. And I think now I'm going to turn it back to Anne for our panel.